Okay, so these are the 4 pattern pieces that you should receive, regardless of what actual pattern you're using. You should have your sleeve, which might look different depending on which option you chose. I'm going to be doing a short sleeve, which this one didn't actually come with an option for, so I'm just going to shorten my sleeve. So yeah, depending on if you're doing a long sleeve or a short sleeve, your sleeve piece may look slightly different. And this is your front piece. It should be cut in a fold. As you can see, there's this these arrows here, and that indicates that you'll be cutting this on a fold. So you'll be cutting one of these. And this is your back piece. It also has the arrows indicating that you're cutting on a fold. So again, you'll be cutting one of these. And then this is just your neckband, and you should only be cutting one of these. It's not on a fold on my pattern piece. Yours may be, but mine isn't. So I'm going to start with the sleeves. And the first thing to do is find your notches, and just make sure you're adding your single notches, or matching your single notches on the front of the shirt and matching your double notches on the back of the shirt. So we can just go ahead and start pinning these together. So like I said, we'll just start by matching up our notches. Okay, so once you have both sleeves pinned onto the front of your shirt, it should look something like this. Again, depending on if you're doing a short sleeve or long sleeve, it might look a little different. Okay, so now we're just going to sew. I'm going to be doing a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance using just a regular straight stitch. Usually on knits you would use a zigzag, but this isn't a fitted shirt, so I'm not too worried about the seams, the threads and the seams being pulled when someone puts the shirt on. But if you're making a tighter fitted garment, definitely a zigzag would be better. But yeah, make sure you also check your own sewing pattern, because they might not use a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance like mine. So just be mindful of that, and also make sure to do your back stitching at the beginning and the ends of your seam. Okay, so now we're done this first seam, and just make sure you do the exact same thing for your other sleeve. Okay, so I just finished sewing on both of my sleeves to my front, and so with this you can finish off your seams using either a zigzag stitch or pinking shears or your serger. I'm just going to do pinking shears because it's just the fastest. So yeah, make sure you finish off your seams, and then I've went ahead and pressed my seam allowances also. I pressed them towards the shirt, and so you should have something that looks like this. And now we're just going to attach the back of the shirt to the other sides of the sleeves, matching up the notches. So there's your notch. I don't know how well you can see it, but yeah, just make sure you are checking your notches and matching those up first. So we are pinning the sleeves to the back of the shirt pretty much the exact same way we did the other side. The only difference is that we're matching the double notches. And then once you have your sleeves and your back pinned, you can see that it's starting to look more like a baseball shirt, like how it's going to look in the end. So it should look something like this. The same way we did, and so we're going to sew these seams the same way we did the front. Okay, so again, I'm going to be doing a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, just doing a straight stitch. Remembering to back stitch at the beginning and the end of your seams. So again, we're going to want to do the exact same thing to the other sleeve, the other side of the back. So again, we're going to want to do the exact same thing to the other side, and then just make sure you remember to finish your seams and give it a press. Okay, so I've finished my seams and I pressed them towards my shirt, like towards the green part. And now we need to pin our side seams. So the best thing to do is first match up. I like to match my seams here first, where the shirt meets the sleeves, just to make sure it doesn't get lopsided or something like that. So you can see where they meet here. So I pin there first, and then I like to pin at the notches. And then once you do that, you can just pin the rest of the length of the side seam, and we're going to be pinning the entire length of the side seam up to the end of the sleeve. So we'll be closing off the sleeves at the same time that we're sewing the side seams. Might sound confusing, but I'll show you at the machine. Okay, so as you can see, we're starting at the top of our sleeve and going all down the length of our shirt. And again, I'm doing a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, just a regular straight stitch, because I don't think it needs the zigzag, and also the zigzag takes a lot longer, so if you can get away without doing it, I would. And just make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so now you're just going to make sure you do the exact same thing on the other side seam. Okay, so again, I've finished my seams and I pressed them towards the shirt, towards the green part. Okay, so now we just have to attach our neckband, and what we're going to do is just attach the short ends, like pin the short ends together, and depending on the fabric you're using, it might have a tendency to curl up. Some knits do this, and it's especially frustrating when you're doing the neckband, because then when you're trying to sew, it will curl up and it can just be frustrating. So one thing you can do is use this spray starch. So you just spray it on the fabric and then press the fabric before sewing So I'll show you. It looks like this. This is the one I use. And I've found that it makes a really big difference. So I definitely recommend that. But like I said, we're going to start with pinning the short ends of our pattern piece here. And we're just going to stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along the short edge. And then we're going to press it open, which I'll show you. So again, we're sewing a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along this edge, or whatever your pattern says for your seam allowance. Or no, sorry, we're doing a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So just double check your pattern and see if it's a different size seam allowance than the rest of your pattern, because sometimes for things like neckbands, it is a different seam allowance. So then we're just going to open it up this way and press the seam allowance opened. Okay, so I've pressed my neckband in half lengthwise with the raw seam on the inside, so it's wrong sides together with the right side facing out. And I'm going to match up these notches to my shirt. There's only 3 notches that I need to match up for my pattern that I'm using. We aren't pinning all the way around the circumference of the neckband. So just find your notches and pin them. And we're going to be pinning the neckband on with the raw edge facing up towards the edge of the neckline. So the folded edge of the neckband is going to be facing down towards the shirt. And my pattern actually didn't come with the notch for the front center of the shirt, so I'm just going to try and find it by pulling on the neckband, like holding the back edge and the front edge, and this kind of gives me an idea of where the front center should be. And then I'm going to line up my front shoulder seams and sort of fold the shirt in half to find the front center of where the front of my neckband should be. And I'm going to pin the neckband to the shirt in this spot. So something I forgot to mention, which is really important, is make sure your neckband is on the right side of your shirt. So on the outside of your shirt, you're not stitching your neckband to the wrong side or the inside of your shirt. You need to make sure it's on the outside. So the neckband and the shirt are right sides facing. So I've got my pins in, and for the rest of the band, we're going to try and pull it so that it reaches all the way around the circumference of the shirt. Your neckband is usually going to be a little bit smaller than your actual shirt, so you need to kind of stretch it as you sew, just to make sure it can stretch all the way around. Okay, so like I said, I'm doing a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance for the neckband, and I strongly recommend doing a straight stitch for the first time around. In case you make a mistake, getting the zigzag stitch out will take a very long time. So yeah, I'm doing a straight stitch, and then I'll probably go over with the zigzag stitch afterwards, because this is a part of the shirt that will get pulled on and that could cause the seams to tear. So Yeah, I'm doing the straight stitch first at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And just remember that you need to be pulling the neckband so that it will fit around your neckline. And so one thing to just think about while you're sewing is that because it's not pinned, the neckband is not pinned on the shirt all the way around, we just need to make sure to check that the neckband and the shirt are still properly lined up. You wouldn't want to get all the way to the end of your neckband to find out you haven't actually sewn it onto the shirt because the shirt maybe slipped away from the neckband while you sew. So just maybe check, make sure you keep an eye on that. Then all you need to do also is just finish your seam, press it, and then all that's left is the hem at the bottom of your shirt and at the sleeves. Okay, so your neckband should look something like this when you pull it up towards the ceiling, and just make sure you press the seam allowance. As you can see, it's facing down, so press it down towards the shirt. And then what I'm going to do is do some top stitching all around the edge of the neckband, just kind of to hold this seam allowance here in place. This is optional, you don't have to do this, I just prefer to. Yeah, so I've already went ahead and pressed my shirt, but just make sure you do that first if you are going to do top stitching. Okay, so then the last thing you'll need to do is just hem your sleeves and the bottom of your shirt. There's a few different options for doing this, so you can do whichever one you like. Since I cut mine pretty clean, I'm actually going to leave my edges raw because knits don't fray, so you don't have to hem the edges. It's just a personal preference. So once you've chosen your hem, you're all done. So thanks for watching.